5:30 on June 25th, 2025. I will open the Town of Board of Health meeting. And the meeting will also be available on Zoom. The Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak must raise the hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute rather. Note that this meeting is being televised and recorded by Bourne Community TV for replay. If anyone in the audience is also recording or videotaping, they need to acknowledge such at this time. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and votes by the Board of Health. If anyone from the public wishes to access the meeting remotely, they can do so by clicking the Zoom link or by calling the following conference line on their phone and joining the Zoom meeting ID and password below. The dial-in number is 309-205-3325, and the Zoom meeting ID 848-0862-6866. The password is 897944. Do we have anybody on Zoom joining us?
I thought I saw MJ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. All right, so we'll take attendance. Miguel Prieto.
Here.
Dusty Meyer.
Here.
Margaret Reale.
Here.
Bob Collette here. And Donald Ellis is absent this evening. So first item, the second item on the agenda is the tobacco violation continuance. It's a violation of 105 CMR 665.010. A, minimum standards for retail sale of tobacco and electronic nicotine delivery systems and Bourne Board of Health tobacco regulations. Sale of a tobacco product to a person under the minimum legal sales age at Cumberland Farms, 4 MacArthur Boulevard on March 31st, 2025. And this is a first offense. Is there anybody here from Cumberland Farms?
I don't see anyone, no.
Seeing none. Any discussion or comments from the board on this case?
Right. It said continued. Was this one of the cases that the person was out of the country or something of that? I don't remember
This
continuing
one
that.
was continued from that same meeting, April 23rd. The board moved to continue until the chair could review video footage that Cumberland Farms had submitted for our review, just so we had the full story of what went down.
Super.
Okay, so as I was the person conducting or overseeing the compliance check, I am permitted by law to discuss this but not to vote on it, so I will abstain when it comes time to the vote. But I will provide the details regarding this situation. And at the time, we have a 20-year-old youth buyer who entered the Cumberland Farms at 4 MacArthur Boulevard and attempted to make a purchase of, I believe it was Black and Mild cigars. And at the clerk on duty did ask for an ID, at which time the youth stated that he did not have one. And there was another gentleman in the store who stated to the clerk at the time, "Oh, he's fine, he works for me, you can sell it to him." Which, of course, is illegal because the ID was never presented to complete the purchase to the clerk. So I'm available for any other questions that folks might have. That's basically the scenario right there. The sale was made without the youth providing an ID, which is required by state law and Town of Bourne regulations.
The only thing, even though it's a minor offense of all the offenses, and the clerk did attempt to get a thing, I think the very minimum we can do we should do, is the minimum penalty. If anyone.
Well, it's a first offense,
Correct.
right? So we have to go by what the regulations, the state regulations are for our first offenses. They've got it all stipulated for us anyway, right? I don't think we can't do anything different than they say, right?
No.
Except be stricter, I suppose.
We can be stricter, but we cannot, we cannot be less stringent.
Deviate.
Yeah,
We can't deviate from the
Right.
rules and regulations of it.
right. There's no variance.
So yeah, the board's regulation that you got was voted in 2019. No, 2020.
It was recent.
Recently.
23, I
23?
think, yeah.
Was voted on and was made it a little bit more stringent, so the first offense could be,
Is that in, oh,
yeah.
no, this is all sewage.
yeah, first offense
This is
violation in
sewer.
the state code was a $1,000 fine plus a suspension of the sales from 0 to 30 days, and the board chose one
minimum of
day.
one, yeah.
Yeah, the board chose one day as the suspension for a first offense.
Okay,
So,
so we're gonna go ahead and make
Any
the
other
motion.
questions, or, okay, then, right, take.
I wrote down the.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion. So I move that Cumberland Farms Incorporated, located at 4 MacArthur Boulevard, for the first tobacco offense in 36 months, sale of a tobacco product to a person under legal age, occurred on March 31st, 2025. They shall pay $1,000 fine and suspend sale of all tobacco products for 1 business day. All tobacco products shall be removed from the shelves and placed in a secure location within the building, and the business must provide access to the health department or any member of the Board of Health to assess compliance.
I second that.
Okay. Dusty?
Yes.
And Bob, I abstain. Margaret did the motion, so she's, yeah. Okay.
Can we back up? When she made the motion, shouldn't we have seconded that
Yeah,
motion?
it's-
Why don't we correct that
Okay.
in the minutes?
Dr. Prieto seconded the motion.
I second the motion.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
You don't hear me when I say hi when I came.
You're not at home, you can speak up.
Okay, Dr. Piano said, okay. Okay, so, moving on to item number 3. It's a public hearing to propose a Bourne Board of Health regulations requiring upgrades to best available nitrogen-reducing technology in natural resource area nitrogen-sensitive areas pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 111, Section 31. Regulation to include requiring upgrades to best available nitrogen-reducing technologies for all new construction and increases in flow. So we got a copy of the proposed regulation. Anybody have an opportunity to look?
So Bob, you'll just want to open the public hearing. Yep.
So, okay, I'll now call to order the public hearing to hold discussion on a proposed local Board of Health regulation titled Regulation Requiring Upgrades to Best Available Nitrogen-Reducing Technology in Natural Resource Area Nitrogen-Sensitive Areas, and to receive further public comment on said regulation. This regulation is being proposed in accordance with the board's authority under MGL Chapter 111, Section 31, and is intended to protect public health and local water quality by reducing nitrogen loading from on-site septic systems in sensitive areas. The full text of this proposed regulation has been made available to the public on the Health Department website and at the Health Department office of Town Hall. Written public comment were accepted through Friday, June 20th. No written public comment was submitted during that time. First, I will recognize the Health Director to briefly summarize the proposed regulation, and then we will open the floor to verbal public comment, including both in-person and remote participants. If you are joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you'd like to be heard. We will call on participants in order and ask that you state your name and address for the record before offering your comments. Ground rules for this hearing will be that we ask all speakers to keep comments respectful and concise, avoid interrupting others, and limit initial comments to 3 minutes, time permitting, to allow all voices to be heard. After we receive public comment, the board will have the opportunity to ask questions, deliberate, and determine next steps regarding the regulation. So Caitlin will give a brief synopsis of the proposed regulation, and then public comment will be heard. Caitlin.
All right, so this proposed regulation would require the use of Mass DEP approved banner technology, so best available nitrogen-reducing technology, for all new construction and/or increases in Title V wastewater flow, design or actual, within areas designated by the state as natural resource area nitrogen-sensitive areas. This would apply regardless of if the town submits a notice of intent or watershed permit for the associated impaired watersheds. and it will include a provision that if or when a municipal sewer becomes available, property owners may be required to connect in accordance with state law and local policy. The purpose of this regulation that the board is talking about tonight is to ensure that any nitrogen reduction efforts undertaken by the town, either through our CWMP or while applying for any watershed permits, are not undermined by any new development, change of use, or flow increases that would further increase nitrogen loading in those impaired areas. This regulation will help prevent backsliding while long-term wastewater planning solutions are being implemented in our town.
Okay. So any comment from the public? Nobody in the hearing room here? Anybody on Zoom?
We got MJ.
MJ?
Is she here?
MJ Mastrangelo, she's,
Yeah.
let's see
No, I
her.
said, did she?
Unmuted.
Okay.
I should-
All right, so I do have some comments. Mary J. Mastrangelo, Spraguenet Road, Tomet. I'm speaking actually for myself. I'm not representing the select board with these comments. I'm just giving my own perspective right now. I do want to thank you for drafting regulations, but I do have some comments. One, the select board has voted to file a notice of intents for watershed permits for Phineas Harbor and Megansett-Squatigue watersheds. The regulations should acknowledge the filing of the notice of intents for watershed permits and take the watershed permit notice of intents into consideration in the regulations. Two, the regulations do not address cesspools and should mandate that all cesspools are deemed to be failed systems as of the date of the regulations and need to be upgraded to be compliant Title V systems within 2 years. 3, the regulations do not address relief for areas identified as potential for sewer in the draft recommended plan. 4, the final recommended plan report, based on the comments received in the MEPA public comment period, has not been issued. Regulations should consider the recommendations in the final report and should not be finalized until the final recommended plan report is approved by the select board. 5, the effectiveness of general use IA systems does not meet the 75% removal goal of Title V in nitrogen sensitive areas. Filing of notice of intents gives the town some time to consider the best course of action. And I think we should be careful in drafting regulations. 6, the wastewater advisory committee voted at their meeting yesterday on June 24th, 2025, 2 recommendations to present to the select board. One is a recommendation to edit the draft report to include the watershed permits from Megansett-Squatigue and Phineas Harbor, and for any watersheds that become nitrogen sensitive areas, with the primary goal of sewering as much as can be done, but recognizing we will be using a combination of sewering and van wrap throughout the town. And second, to recommend to the select board that with the recommendation as sewering is the first choice option, that working with Falmouth and discussing connecting to Joint Base Cape Cod for sewering options for Phineas Harbor, Megansett-Squatigue, and any other watershed areas that could be connected. So overall, my comment is that I urge the Board of Health to take comments into consideration and delay the issuance of regulations until all comments have been considered. Thank you.
Thank you. I see someone else on the Zoom feed. Do you have any comments?
No one else is raising
No
their
one
hand.
else would like to comment? Okay. All right. So, final call for a public comment. At this time, the public comment portion of the hearing is now closed, and the board will now proceed with their discussion. So, we have a few options here. That if a vote is planned tonight, which isn't necessarily, we proceed to discuss and consider a motion regarding the adoption of the proposed regulation, or if we choose to continue deliberation, we continue the review and deliberation at our next scheduled meeting prior to taking any formal action, or if revisions are needed, take the comments under advisement and make any necessary revisions to the regulation before considering final adoption at a future meeting. So whichever the way the board decides to go, and a motion and a vote will be needed prior to closing the public hearing. Once a motion and vote occur, you'll need to close the public hearing before moving on to the next agenda item. So, go ahead,
I
Miguel.
was very happy to hear Mrs. Mastrangelo give her comments. I had a lot of concerns. One of my concerns was that residents in the affected area, if I was not aware that the waiver was obtained, or the permit, whichever way you want to call it, that they will be forced to convert within 5 years and then convert to sewers, and it's a double, very expensive cost. And that basically is going to drive out regular people from our town, and then just people with a lot of means. That we don't want to do that. So that's one. That brings the other comment that I want to put into consideration is for the people that are actually asked to go with a nitrogen reducing system, what is the time frame if sewers become available before they're forced to convert? Or if they're forced to convert and no time is given, then we need to provide funding for that. Because like if someone does one of these systems, as you can see, they're quite pricey.
Right.
And then 2 years later, we got sewers. So,
Right.
so I need to have that, stipulated. What is it gonna be? And, like I'm not the technical guy here, but, I don't know if it is 5 years, 10 years, or whatever time that is deemed appropriate. We certainly wanna do was be good stewards for the environment, but we're gonna be good stewards to the population of our town. I don't wanna do like undue burdening towards them.
Sure. Okay.
And then one thing I did not understand, and I'm gonna ask me or you or Darcy to explain what Ms. Mastrangelo mentioned about the cesspools converting to a nitrogen reducing system.
Right.
So, and then what we're gonna do for the time frame if that area becomes, with sewers.
So, under Board of Health regulations currently, cesspools are already an automatic failure. So, that already exists in your regulations that are current. However, do they still exist? Yes, because how do you catch a cesspool that's been in existence for over 100 years? So we catch those on sales of properties when they're doing a building permit that triggers a Title V inspection report. And at those times, if we uncover that it's a cesspool, then they're required to upgrade within 2 years per Title V.
To the current or to the one for 2030? Do they need to have a nitrogen?
So just in general, so Title V requires if a cesspool is found, it's a failed system per our regulations, so they have 2 years to upgrade to a complying system. So that could be a conventional regular septic system if they're not in a nitrogen sensitive area and they don't have any setback requirements from your 150-foot setback regulation. So that's how that stands there. For these particular regulations, it does not apply to everyone in those watersheds. It applies to only people building a new home or adding increased flow to their system.
So not a failed system.
Correct, no, not a failed system. People who just have to upgrade their septic systems, this would not apply to them. They would still follow whatever the watershed permit application that the select board may or may not file for after this NOI period whatever their protocol is for that.
So you didn't have to include failed system cesspools in these updated regulations because they're covered already.
You already have those
with the
in-
Title
yes.
V.
I believe it's
I think
within-
maybe people are just like, maybe we should find a way to identify them more quickly. Is there any way to do that? Maybe we can't handle it. If we did find that, maybe we couldn't keep up with it, but maybe that might be a concern.
It's hard to find them. In most cases, if it's a cesspool, it's because we don't have a record of it.
Okay.
So it's not in
Too
our
old.
files. It's too old for us to know that that's what it is.
But that's something we could think about.
Yep,
like maybe,
absolutely.
Is identifying them. I think it's great not to, to have them covered by just the traditional Title V, not necessarily say that they've got to go to an IA system. I think this is a good balance. Because, not that everyone in those, in our watersheds, the natural resource watershed areas have to go to, it's only those who are building a new home or putting on an addition, increasing flow. That is a good balance, I think.
Yeah.
So everyone is not being forced to, if that's how people will feel. I'm not saying
Yes.
that that's what you're doing, but, oh, no, everyone's going to do this. And they also have the choice of not building or not
In that
adding
area.
on.
And so with this regulation, how it is now, is basically how Title V stands currently without a watershed permit and NOI. So currently in Title V, all properties within the natural resource area, nitrogen sensitive areas that are doing new construction or increase of flow are already required to upgrade to best available nitrogen reducing technology. This regulation would just keep that the same as the town progresses with any implementation that they want to do for the rest of that watershed.
Okay. So then, but there is the concern of the sewer that you brought up.
Which it should be the way that we should go, right? But, the sewers, as when possible. Now, I have another question, and this might not be the purview of the Board of Health, but aren't all properties supposed to be inspected every so on for tax purposes?
Like the assessor's department?
Yes.
Yes.
Could we add just to see if they have a septic, or not to see if it is valid, if it is septic or cesspool as part of those assessments?
It's a partnership we could explore, but just like the assessors, they don't have to be let into every property, so we wouldn't have to be let in and answer that question. So, yeah.
True.
And it would require a lot because you can't see underground what's connected from
Correct,
the
yes.
house up.
Yeah, you could,
And-
try and get some information, but maybe they don't know.
Okay.
Now, do you, or the cesspool pumpers who work in this town and dispose of it, I imagine up the landfill they have an area, or they go to Wareham, I'm not sure, it doesn't matter. Every time they pump out a house, do they send a report to you people?
They are
So if
supposed
you
to.
have one come up twice in a short period of time, you can say, oh, we got a problem over here.
So yeah, if a system is pumped more than 4 times in 1 year, that is considered a failed system.
I thought that's how they
Yes.
went.
Any other questions, comments? Well, how would you like to proceed on this?
Well, this is my proposed motion.
Okay.
I will make a motion that we do not approve this until after all the comments that Ms. Mastrangelo made and the other concerns are addressed.
Yep. I agree with that, so that we can have some time to sort those things out and see how, if we need to make any amendments to the proposed regulation.
Is there any urgency? I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, what is the sense of urgency?
So if the select board files their notice of intent before July 7th? Then that, if they file an NOI and we don't have a regulation in place, then that puts a pause on the new construction requirement. So it would just mean that it just means that in that period of the pause of new construction requirement to upgrade to Banner could cause some issues with people who have already proposed new construction projects and are required to do Banner. So that's the only concern with that timeline,
Okay.
if we wait. But
And
obviously,
they've already filed, right? So,
they have not filed the notice of intent. They voted to file the notice of intent.
okay. Do we know when that is?
It's due on the
Expected
7th
Okay.
at the latest. I don't know when the plan is to submit it.
So that doesn't give us really any time to,
Yeah.
Okay, just so that I'm clear, so I just want to understand, you're saying that if we don't file before if we don't, update these regulations before they file the notice of intent, then there's going to be some problems with some people.
We could get some arguments from people who have current ongoing projects
They
that.
already applied for a permit.
Correct, yeah.
So why is there a problem?
Yeah. Yep, it's just gonna cause a little bit of headaches, but that's the issue. And then anyone who applies for a project in that interim period would not be required to do Banner. So any new applications coming in wouldn't require it until a regulation were implemented.
okay.
So we've got some people that are going to be in this gap period, and there's going to be people in town saying, oh, how come you got to,
Yes.
you know, you
That's
didn't
the
have
only-
to do an
the only
IA system,
concern of
and now,
waiting, yeah.
now we do.
Yeah, how many projects right now do we have that would be impacted or potentially impacted by this?
I can't say off the top of my head. I just know that there's a couple building permits that I've made comments on that, you know, there was already some pushback against. But like Dr. Brito said, is they've already applied for such a permit, already got what they are supposed to be doing, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that gap will, like Margaret said, is someone will be like, oh, how come they're allowed to do this now and we weren't? That's the only, again, just some
Well, the
headache
laws
stuff, but
change.
it's fine, yeah. Mhm.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
I really don't like this. I'll tell you why.
okay.
My own personal view now, that all time and money are being wasted on IA systems when you should just go town-wide with a sewer system. It will eliminate all these problems. Am I correct?
You're not incorrect, but is that the town's plan at this time to sewer the whole town?
They should consider
And
both ways. And I think we, as a town in this area, we waited way too long. Should have been started a long time ago, and it's no fault of yours, trust me. And talking to townspeople, say, we're waiting for you people to make up our minds. And that's a horrible thing. I hate that. I got to decide for them, and they're saying, well, you people have all the information. How many meetings have the state or town had that the public is invited? And only one meeting, really, we had a good turnout. And I know people walked out here shaking their head, they were confused. And the problem of it is, we couldn't hear out there in the main area, so we were straining to find information. I think it should be presented to the public in a better situation, so everyone can hear, an auditorium, one of the schools, something of that nature. Because there were a lot of people sitting out there had questions,
Yeah.
and they couldn't get them answered. You know,
And not only that, the lawyer that was doing the presentation from the engineering company, he couldn't answer. How many questions could he say, well, I don't know, I'm not sure, I can't really answer that. there were a lot of questions he wasn't able to
Well, the
address.
gentleman who was representing the state giving all the information, we never heard a word he said.
Yeah.
And,
But, you know, that is the recommendation of the wastewater advisory committee, is to, instead of IA systems being the number one choice.
yeah, I don't.
And to flip it and make sewer everywhere possible the number one choice, IA systems backup. But I think the thing is how, like you're saying, how long is it's gonna take? And I'm sure, you know, the concern is like, so what are we doing in the meantime?
Yeah.
Let's, you know, try to have, so I understand, you know, but I don't know. I also understand waiting until, you know, not immediately doing these regulations, until all of the comments, we have some more comments. I really, you know, think that's a good idea, but I also understand the concern of, you know, really moving so that there's something in place as we hopefully do, you know, come around to doing sewering, that there's something in place. Because people are gonna be doing, you know, adding on, people are gonna be building, and we would like, the IA systems seem to be better, at least, than your traditional. If they're monitored, if they're taken care of properly.
Right.
So I do, you know, so try to get some in place, trying to put something in place where there are some
Yeah.
as we wait. But then that runs into the whole thing of exactly what Miguel brought up, is that people are gonna be then perhaps very upset if soon sewer comes along and they've spent the money on the, so it's not easy. It's not an easy decision.
It's not. But speaking of the sewer connection, so within this regulation, I just wondered what your thoughts were on that requirement portion in D, sewer connection when available. So in D2, it says, this would kind of be like you said, so if we make someone do a best available national use technology and then sewer in the area becomes available,
Yes.
you know, we're not necessarily gonna make them connect right away, but then we have this little section here that says prohibition of septic system work if sewer is available. So where a sewer system connection is feasible, the installation of a new or upgraded on-site system or any major repair requiring a permit shall be prohibited unless deemed. So basically, the connection will be required when work needs to be done on the septic system, not necessarily
Oh,
right
okay.
away.
All right.
Right, it's just when the sewers are made available, it's mandatory for people to connect.
So
And-
with,
and we're, so, and it doesn't really stipulate a time frame for them, like if they've had you know, a new alternative system put in at great cost, well, you know, are we gonna give them X amount of time?
so that's kind of where, so it says connection may be required. So it's not right away necessarily automatically required. And then section 2 says that when connection is feasible, the installation of a new or upgraded system or any major repair requiring a permit should be prohibited. So that's stating that when those things are triggered, that's when the connection would be required. So if they pull a septic permit, I would say, hey, no, you can't have a septic permit because you have to connect to sewer now.
Right, that seems fair.
Well,
If they're already gonna
Yeah.
spend money to work on the septic.
Right.
They should put that towards
Septic
connecting to the sewer.
has, you know, has lived its expected, you know, period of function, and now it's time, instead of repairing that, you are required to connect.
And then there's also the subsection within there that we say the connection is required, but they say we have extenuating circumstances, they come before the Board of Health, and you guys could grant an extension.
That's true, but again, this may be required, it's kind of vague. So what is the basis for that requirement?
So I'm gonna go with, what's the system looking like right now? Is there work needed on that system?
All right, so let's stipulate that. So
Yeah, that's where it is. Number 2, prohibition of septic system work if sewer is available. So if they go to pull a septic permit, I would say, no, you need to connect to sewer instead.
Okay.
We can word it differently if that,
No, so hold on.
Yeah.
So if someone has an alternative system and now sewer is made available, they're not gonna be forced to connect to sewers?
not necessarily, unless some
Well,
other. Well,
you,
that's-
yeah, you can't, like,
So
you
based,
have to be
based off of your
precise.
regulations, no.
Okay,
But say the select board's watershed permit says something differently, or say the sewer commission has rules and regulations that are different. So they might supersede yours, is the only thing. But your regulations do not stipulate that it's required.
I just want to protect the public.
Absolutely, yes.
That's all. Like, I don't live in those areas, so it's not that I'm personally affected, but you know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
And does, I'll go ahead, Margaret.
No, I was just gonna say, state regulations, does it say that they must require, that they must,
Within Title V,
yeah,
I don't believe there's a stipulation that says it must.
And that's basically what I was asking, is, you know,
Yeah.
does this reflect the statewide minimum standard in the Title V regulation, this whole drafted reg?
but can we be protective in the sense of, it sounds like you're saying that we could like to hold off as long as possible, as the board being aware of certain circumstances.
Especially if it's an IA system, if they can come forward with testing results that show that they are reducing the nitrogen that they're supposed to be, that could be grounds for the board to grant such an extension.
See, from working out at the base at the test center, every year they came in with new types of systems. So I imagine IA will be improved over the years.
I'm sure more and more will come across.
Correct,
yeah.
and then nitrogen level will be lowered for them. So I can understand what they're saying, an IA system, here's a person who invested 40,000 or better to get this system installed, and 2 years later, they said, sorry, gotta rip it out and connect. You gotta hook up. It is a hard thing. And a lot of people say, well, where's the state government behind us giving us money to help us here? That's the thing, because you have a lot of elderly and young people
Right.
who have homes that $40,000 gonna cripple them. And we'll lose
Yeah.
a lot of good people. And that's what and especially the elderly.
Right.
I'm very, very
You
worried.
push 'em out of the
My
area.
mother put her house up for sale, said, I'm not leaving, I'm moving in with your sister,
Yep,
because I can't afford this.
Yeah.
And that's what, so the select board's NOI, saying that they are planning to file this watershed permit, will put that pause on requiring everyone to upgrade until their plan is submitted, and then they have 20 years to continue this plan based off of whatever their trajectory is. This regulation only applies to people who are modifying their system or creating a new construction. So are they increasing flow, or are they making a new development on that lot? That's what this one is only referring to, those ones, and we could also include in that sewer connection when available section, if the board wanted, we could be more specific about what could be extraordinary circumstances, or even if you can, like if your IA system that you installed is meeting a certain standard, that it could be extended.
Yeah.
We could include something like that as
it's
well.
working perfectly well, and
Yeah.
they're taking good care of it, and.
Because I don't really foresee much issues if we can have the new draft done by the next meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
And so, you know, it's not going to be an issue. You
Great.
mentioned
Oh, no,
that this time of the year, not that many new applications. The ones that were approved, they're approved.
Right, I don't feel comfortable with approving the regulation
As
as
is,
written
yeah.
tonight. So, especially given the comments that were shared with us, we have time to consider those and, potentially, add them in as potentially, amendments to this regulation. And, great comments by everybody here, great questions, I think. But we can't, in my opinion, we shouldn't vote on it tonight.
I agree.
Yeah.
Are there any specific,
Points?
points or questions that you guys want to see differently on here, as well as MJ's comments?
I would like to be able to sit at home and digest this and then send you an email.
That's fine.
And simply because I want to go on the state site and I can fall back. Us talking in all this,
Yeah.
I like to see it in black and white. I understand that way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, same as anybody has any additional comments that they want, just send it to me and
Just the time frame.
the time frame. Yep.
You know, you've always
Yeah.
been very accommodating, so
Right.
I'm not too worried.
And I would imagine the number of, systems that are already in planning and at some stage of being built or planned for, that will be impacted or won't be impacted because of they've already got a lot, a current application is gonna be fairly minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get a couple of people, some blowback on that, but, that might, but I'm not really concerned with that. As long as we get something solid on the books, but not tonight.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
All right. May I make the motion?
Sure.
Make a motion to make the suggested changes coming from Ms. Mastrangelo and from the rest of the board. And then we put a continuance on voting on these regulations until we have the new draft available.
I second it.
I heard that, because I made sure I heard that.
Okay, Dusty?
Yes.
Yes. Bob, yes.
So then you'll just need to close out that
Okay.
public hearing.
Yep, so, okay, we'll now officially close the public hearing. And, on behalf of the board, thank you again for your engagement and participation in this important process. This includes the public hearing. The board will now move on to the next item on the agenda. So thank you. So the next item is number 4, public comment on non-agenda items. Does anybody have any public comment on any other topics?
It doesn't look like we have any public comment on non-agenda items, but the individuals from Cumberland Farms did manage to log on late, and they were wondering if they could have a moment to speak.
Yeah, well, we've closed the case, but sure, now that you're here, yeah.
Jenny, you can unmute.
Hi, my name is Jenny Raver. I'm with Cumberland Farms. I'm the district manager for the Bourne locations. Unfortunately, I was sent the wrong link in my email, so I joined the meeting late, so I do apologize. I was just wondering if everybody was able to view the video that I submitted, because I do feel after watching it over and over again that the situation wasn't handled the way it was supposed to be. The manager of the store was the person that was shopped, and he did refuse the sale. He did ask for ID and then refuse the sale, and the elderly gentleman stepped in and continued to badger the manager, saying that it was his employee and that he would pay for the purchase. I feel at some point that shopper should have stepped away and said, "Thank you for your time," and left. There has to be a point where we don't entrap these people. I want my team to do the right thing wholeheartedly, but we can't be dishonest in the process either.
Right, so just to recap what actually happened inside the store, but there was no audio on the video. And I'm actually the person who was conducting the compliance check as the director of the Cape Cod Regional Tobacco Control Program. We check every store once a year across the
Right,
Cape
I've
Cod.
met quite a few
So,
times.
all right, so what happened was the buyer went in, and the clerk did in fact ask for ID, and then was told, no, I don't have one. And the other gentleman in the store said, oh, he's okay, he works for me, or something, I'm paraphrasing, but that was the basic wording as you just shared. And then the clerk sold anyway. So the clerk still broke the law by not requiring an ID. He didn't actually see an ID. And so whereby the purchase was made, the law was broken there. And it's unfortunate. I've seen that similar scenario numerous times over the years, and people get thrown off by it, but not one bit of dishonesty on the young man's part, nor zero entrapment, because it wasn't
It's
something that...
I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to interrupt you.
because it wasn't, no, it's okay. Because, we never go in with the intention of deceiving anybody or entrapping anybody. But if the sale is made, then that's on the clerk. And unfortunately, in this case, and I know that they've been very, that particular location has been pretty good over the years. I'm happy about that. As I said earlier, my best day is when I go out and we check 20, 25 stores and nobody sells. But that hasn't been the case. I think we got 8 on each side of the bridge on separate days or something like that, or 8 on one day and 5 on another. It's a lot. So that, to us as a Board of Health, I would think that's very unacceptable. It's, normal to get 1 or 2 rare exceptions here and there, but not 13 or whatever it was that we got across the town over a period of a couple of days. And so it's unfortunately for managers in the retail business, I understand and I'm sympathetic to the fact that you have a lot of turnover and it's constant education and training, and I know that you have an in-house training program, but on this case, the situation, the sale was made and without the clerk actually looking at an ID, and that's really what it boils down to. The other gentleman that was in the store had no business in doing what he did, and if we've had people buy, I was telling a story earlier about it, but we've had on occasion people in the store buy the product for the person who's trying to, and in that case, we can't do anything about it, but years ago when we used to work with the local police and they would drive around, if they knew that happened, they would pull the vehicle over and ticket the person that made the purchase. So, I mean, I know that you're aware that people of legal age are prohibited from purchasing nicotine delivery products for young people, underage people.
It's just, I felt that at some point, the shopper should have ended he engaged in the conversation with the gentleman.
Yeah.
So it's too bad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that just, they need to see an ID, and that's really what it boils down to.
Okay, well, thank you
Yeah.
for your time. I appreciate
Well, thank you.
giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you, yeah. Okay. Okay, so, what else do we
As
have?
soon as she's off.
Hmm?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who's working at the store running the register, I thought before they take a pack of cigarettes and set it on the counter, they're supposed to have the ID first.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Well, it's not the law, but that's a procedure that people do so they remember to ask for ID.
Right, so and when I train merchants, I would say, guys, stop the transaction at the first second. Can I have a pack of Newports, or could I have a pack of Black & Milds? Before you reach for it, like you said, place it on the counter. Now you've already begun the transaction. You put the product down in
Right.
front of them. You ask for the ID. No ID, goodbye. Most people are pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And it saves time, especially if there are people in line, you're not.
That's the other thing. I think the young people look for a line, so the store clerk is busy and let's, do this fast,
Yeah.
I can do it fast.
Well, that has been a problem, and I educate them about this too, because if you have 4 people in line behind you, you get nervous, you want to move people through. Sometimes they get a little lazy and they don't ask for ID, they just ring it up, take the money and next, So, but they just have to be vigilant about requiring the IDs. And sometimes situations like that do arise, and it's unfortunate, but.
A learning curve.
Yep. So, all right, do we have minutes to approve here? Let's see,
I never saw
I didn't see any meeting,
I don't think we had them, no.
no, we didn't have them. Okay, so, okay, brings us number 7. motion
Not
to-
number 5, you haven't
Oh,
mentioned
sorry.
number 5.
Did we just, comments from the board regarding future agenda items. We did that, we did that already. Yeah, and then approve the minutes, but we don't have minutes to approve. So we're on to number 7.
So I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Any second?
I second.
Second. Dusty.
I like the AC, so I'm staying.
I'm with you. No.
It is.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, the meeting is over. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.